This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's my pleasure to have with us once again Dr. Buck Melton. Thank you for being here, Buck.
Always happy to be here.
Now, we brought up this possibility of becoming the vice president.
We have brought it up.
Now, I have just one question. Mm-hmm. Could you, in some ways, get me a position somewhere in the government? I wonder, an ambassador.
So now it becomes clear.
Maybe an ambassadorship to some nice place with a beach. Where I mean, is that what happens? The ambassadors are often
I think I'd have to shoot for the presidency.
Maybe somewhere in the Caribbean, a nice place there. We could. You couldn't do that as vice president.
Depends on my relationship with the president. Right. And if my relationship with the president were that of Vice President Jefferson to President Adams, I don't think there would be much traction there. But that does lead us where we're headed tonight.
Well, there's always hope there, Bucky. And so now maybe we can get back into our discussion after our little aside here. We've having a conversation about the French Revolution, the terminology of France, the big words that came out of that, how they relate to our country. So basically, saying them in English would be liberty, equality, and fraternity. And so we discuss liberty to some degree. And now maybe we can discuss equality. So that's one of the big things that came out of the French Revolution. And we've said, suppose you were a peasant. And we discussed that a bit about how tough life would be and how great it would be not to be a peasant anymore and to have liberty, presumably, which is a complicated word, to be able to do as you wish to much degree. And then the other thing would be that you would be equal. Everyone would be equal with each other. And the law courts in France treated people in different ways. And you could say also in the U.S. their law courts were treating, if you were a slave, certainly the law would treat you in a different way. So the law wasn't treating people as equal in either country. And I don't think, particularly in the American, we've had a discussion about the American Revolution, about what actually happened. And I would ask the question, just to flip back, equality, how much equality actually came out of the American Revolution, and then how much equality came out of the French Revolution? How much, yes. What do you think?
Well, when I think of equality, or let me reverse that, when I think of the American Revolution, I really don't think of equality at all. Now, you can argue that Thomas Jefferson did because of that very great statement, and it could be unpacked for a great many hours on here, yes, that all men are created equal. But my immediate response is that's just Jefferson talking. Mm-hmm. That for me, the American Revolution, I just don't see equality there at all. And I think that this is probably a good moment to mention that the catchphrase liberty, equality, leaving aside fraternity for a minute, but they are diametrically opposed. That if you're using these things without reflection, it's just for soundbite purposes. You can't have perfect liberty and perfect equality. I'm not even sure whether you can easily have both. They are in tension with each other. So I just don't see that being a draw at all when it comes to the American Revolution, with the possible exception that the colonists were saying, as English subjects, we either are or should be equal in stature to people who are living in England. And by the time the revolution was complete, that didn't exist. It was, we don't care whether we are equal to them at all. We are going to form our own society.
Well, I think that's pretty fair. Certainly, slavery pretty much continued to exist, although some restraint on importation of slaves. The voting changes to be able to vote took a long time to occur. the system itself promoted equality because of the land that was out there. I mean, in some degrees, you could have land, subsistence farming.
Equality of opportunity, in other words.
Well, you know, I won't get too much into it. We could get into economic circumstances, and they have these Gini, if I get it right, Gini numbers, which is it's a ratio of 1 to 0. And so people are now using that. It's pretty interesting the way they do it, or the methodology. But they're saying a country with 1, the number is 1, the ratio is 1, then everything in the whole country belongs to one person. And 0, it's absolute equality, and nobody goes between those two places. And I think the number's coming in at about 0.3 or so, and people may say that the U.S. is somewhat of an unequal place economically. But just to go through the whole deal, you could parse out equality meaning all kinds of things. So you could have economic equality, you could have athletic equality, you could have, height equality, you could have intelligence equality, you could have political equality, you could have legal equality. And so it means all sorts of things that pretty much impossible to orchestrate totally. I mean, you just can't make everyone the same because their brains are different, their body habits are different. I mean, but within some limits, the idea, the notion of equality is useful and pervasive. So parsing that out, and if you were the peasant, I think you could say liberty means the Lord can't tell me what to do. Equality means, because the legal systems gave the peasant short shrift there. I mean, he could now say, in a court of law, I'm equal to anyone, and justice is blind. And I think most people would go along with that. But is it really? If you can afford a very successful lawyer, and then you're doing pro bono, you get a pro bono lawyer, so you're a very skilled person, and maybe it is rather difficult to get equal justice, but at least that's out there. So the idea is, okay, we're going to make the legal system equal. I mean, at some degrees, maybe that would occur. How hard is it to make economic circumstances equal? I mean, how hard is that?
I don't think that's the right word. I think the proper way of putting it is, can it be done at all, rather than how hard. And
well, that's the answer I was searching for, Bucky, and thank you for providing it.
Well, sure. Like I said,
that's good.
That
you can't do it. I can't make it. It's very hard. It's impossible.
No. Well, if you read 1984, they don't really talk about genetic engineering because they didn't know about such things then. But they were attempting to alter human nature to a degree that we would all have the same capacities. And if we all have the same, I suppose, physical, intellectual capacities, then possibly equality, absolute equality of condition could be achieved, at least temporarily. But once again, if in John Adams's words, as well as the words of many others, let's redistribute wealth and have perfect equality, within about 2 weeks, it would have been blown all to pieces. Let's face it. With faces like these, we are never going to be movie stars.
No.
So I'm sorry to break it to you.
Oh, well, finally the truth has appeared.
Betsy's been trying to protect you from this all these years.
You have, Bucky.
Yes.
That's the way it goes.
So, Tommy Lee Jones, you and I, he can have a conversation, okay? So, how did he end up there and you end up here? And
yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? The luck of the draw.
Let's get him in and talk about that.
We could discuss that. We could discuss that.
That you're never going to run the 3-minute mile, especially at this age.
Well, yes, unless I'm engineered, possibly. Yes.
But I'm never going to make a decent brain surgeon. So, and I never would have.
Right. Actually, just to go through this, it's very difficult because people have their abilities are not the same. So some people can have greater abilities. So they're going to be. You can't equal, Mother Teresa, let's say, in generosity, kindness, Christian behavior. Mm-hmm. There are all kinds of things you can't do, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think they're parsing out the idea of equality as a pretty limited kind of idea. And at least equality before the law would be a pretty good one.
Yes.
And that's something that maybe it happened and maybe it didn't in the French Revolution, because there's still the way the system works, and it works the same in, I think, most societies to some degree, that the influential, the big dogs, have a better place at the table in legal disputes. Not always, but it's generally the case to some degree. So it's hard to maintain it, but that's something the French Revolution would want to have. And it seems to me the big thing of the word would be, if you're a French peasant, when you say equal, means that all of the advantages that this other class of people had, this tremendous variance in their situation and your situation as a peasant, those were done away with. So you could walk down the street and be as proud as the noble person, which maybe I'd like to parse that, to take the discussion in that direction, is in America, if you ask people what's their deal, most people would say to some degree I'm middle class. There's a huge middle class, and also the sense of, I guess, Americanism is that it's like a line out of Oklahoma, I'm no better than, if I can remember it.
I ain't saying that I'm better than anybody else, but I'll be darned if I ain't just as good.
That's correct. It's really encapsulate the idea of America in some ways as a class of society where there is a lot of psychological equality, which maybe that's the important thing. I mean, many people would say, well, economic equality is a huge thing, but it's hard to obtain. You can do a little bit with it, or maybe some places more with it. But the idea of this sense of I'm as good as you are, I really think that's out there in America. I really do. I mean, I think that's really part of our great national heritage. That it's almost a joke if someone, you can see it in sundry movies or whatever, the dude that comes out to the West, which is, the West is a very liberating place. Yes. The dude from Boston comes out and they just ha, 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 and all this stuff. Maybe let's see, Trapper John, and let's see, who's the other guy? Hawkeye, right?
Yes.
Those guys.
And then Winchester comes in.
Winchester shows up, ha, ha, ha.
Yes.
And that's the way it is. I mean, no one is the pretentiousness of a class system is just, it's hard to sell that in the U.S.
Yes.
So maybe the equality of it, that's the major issue for the French peasant. I mean, I think there was an enormous intimidation, and I think you can see it a little bit at least in the UK these days. A little bit of the I'm a worker, you're the whatever it is, the noble person or something like that. And that's one of the things in the States, I think, that is, at least I would assert that it's far less evident here, and the notion of some kind of psychological equality is really a useful thing to bind nations together. And just to go through the equality thing, if you feel like there's no way that you can be equal to the great Lord, the only thing to do is to kill him, cut his head off. Is that correct? I mean, Winchester's head was not being cut off on MASH, but
yes. Metaphorically, it often was.
Right.
Or to put it more bluntly, a Smith & Wesson beats 4 aces.
Yes.
If under the rules of the current game you cannot possibly achieve the results you want, you change the game. You change the rules.
Yes.
As I said in our previous episode, you upset the apple cart.
Yes.
Because you have nothing to lose. And that's the thing, you talk about you can afford a better lawyer than I can, so you're going to get more justice. I think even Jefferson, who wrote, first of all men are created equal, and also wrote about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Even Jefferson was intellectually honest enough. He didn't say life, liberty, and happiness. He didn't say life, liberty, and property. He said life, liberty, and the opportunity to procure property.
Yes.
The pursuit of happiness, of property, of eudaimonia.
Yes.
You may be able to afford a better lawyer than I can, but I still have the right to walk into that courtroom, even if I represent myself. And that's worth something. We can never achieve the perfect leveling
Yes.
but we can achieve a floor. We can achieve the minimum standards.
Well, that's an important concept. And just to go through a little bit of the word equality and what Jefferson talked about, born equal. So born in an equal fashion might be the way they all sort of came from the same place, so to speak, and their souls were equal. I think the church, Christianity, has always, for 2,000 years, the idea that you have equal access to heaven and
equal human dignity, if you want to put it that way.
the church did that, and it did that everywhere. Also, there were even some disadvantages with having property. Mm-hmm. And many people would say it's very difficult to be pure if you're encumbered with notions of superiority. Mm-hmm. So if you have notions of superiority, I think the thrust of Christianity is that's probably a false pride, and it's going to interfere with your it's the next life. So that if you say, is the religious system granting people equal access to heaven or to or possibility of going to the bad place, it would be the same. And actually, a high flyer would have more possibilities of not making it, so to speak. So that was a big, I think, card in the deck in regards to these queries. Now, just to also talk about the French story. The way the revolution played itself out was in a strange, crazy way, which that happens in revolutions. When you disturb the social order, it's not knowable what's going to be the end result. I mean, you just hit the apple cart and the apples fly in different directions, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yes.
Well, Napoleon came, and a lot of what Napoleon left France was a lot of equality tossed in the French system. And it's particularly true with access to the universities. The very brightest people that would go to the great national schools in Paris. There was a lot of egalitarianism that was put into the French system that gave poor people access to the top situation, which maybe that's still playing itself out everywhere, and how you do that is complicated. But to rejig the social order to allow equality of opportunity, which is that connected? I think we've sort of made the case perfect equality is difficult to obtain.
Yeah, equality of
and
condition,
so we could say we get some areas where we really want to push equality. Both the U.S. and France do that. Many countries do it. For their own benefit. You want the smart geniuses to be found and help everyone.
Yes. I think what we're getting at here is that to the degree we have equality, it's the equality of opportunity. Your opportunities may be limited, but they are limited by your own personal limitations, or they are constrained by your own personal strengths and weaknesses and merits, and not by something else. Take aristocracy, take nobility, and you can call it titled nobility, the way they had in France on the eve of the Revolution, or you could have a de facto nobility, the way we have it in America today, in which nobody likes to publicly fess up to. But what it comes down to really is you're not succeeding on your own merits, but you're succeeding on the merits of your forebears. You inherit the title, or you inherit the wealth of your predecessor, of your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, which gives you more opportunities. And that's what the French Revolution was reacting against. And really that's what the spirit of egalitarianism in America today is reacting against, the one percenters who somehow are breaking the rules by having all this money. So
yes, and they're using this money for I guess to create insulated communities. So you have a big fence around the community, and so it seems to be sort of part of the human condition to do this. So if you could say, well, this is an aberration that have different inequalities, economic or social classes, that's very strange. It doesn't really exist, and I think in a state of nature, I think it's fair to say it does not exist. So in a small hunter-gatherer band, you're 30 people there. They're all related to each other pretty much. They're all share. They have to live and make it together. It's sort of a band of brothers kind of thing, but it's more than that. It's a band of relatives. They're just trying to make it and live. And maybe in that set of circumstances, there is a lot of equality or a substantial amount. But as the world gets more complicated, the control mechanism that is necessary for large social arrangements to exist, where there's a specialization of labor, there's this, there's that, the big concretions of people, thousands of people living together, the rules by which they live together, it becomes increasingly difficult to have this equal set of circumstances. And it's necessary to put some kind of a control mechanism on board, and the way the control mechanism works is people say, I'm going to surrender my liberty and to the center, to the state, to maybe the people, so to speak. I'm surrendering my liberty. And in return, things will happen. The system will have a pleasing equality to it. They'll try and correct injustices that'll be fair, and because I've surrendered so much to the center. The problem is it inevitably gets corrupted, and it would be very difficult to imagine in our history since the agriculture came along, and it was possible to have large urban collections of people, and then finally city-states, and then finally nation-states, that we have this. It's very difficult to do anything about inequality issues. And what people point to is they point to economic issues, but it may well be there's more than that. So for instance, and I was talking about the psychological sense of equality. So my experience in sort of at least Soviet countries, or I guess you could say pretty socialist countries, or pretty even communist countries, even though it appears that everything is equal, there is in the interstices of the social order, there's still a big dog deal. So for instance, maybe we'll pick Sweden. The professors there are almost the same money, et cetera, but they get their parking place is slightly closer. And then people sort of genuflect in a way when the big dog passes by. And that cycle, there's still a subtle psychological inequality that's present in these countries, and that's maybe what goes on with trying to pursue equality. Now, I think I've spoke a bit here, but now, Bucky, maybe I could take your comments back to the ones you made earlier. Mm-hmm. What's the problem between equality and liberty?
Well, the problem is if you're going to have perfect liberty, state of nature, the individual is all sovereign and all powerful, then and not constrained by any outside force, we're in a situation where might makes right, and there is almost certainly, in a practical sense, there is certainly going to be no equality. Somebody's going to be stronger, somebody's going to be smarter, somebody's going to be tougher, and he's going to get more, and he's going to be able to hold on to it. In a situation of perfect equality of condition, the nail that sticks up is going to be hammered down by the system. You are not permitted to have anything more than your fellow citizens have. No liberty whatsoever. So we're going to have to balance the two. We're not going to have perfect liberty. We're not going to have perfect equality. So if the cry is liberty, equality, fraternity, that means some liberty, some equality, and we won't get to a fraternity just yet.
But so what you've brought up, and I think this is an important issue, these words are in conflict with one another. Yes. So if you take the words as far as you can take them, you discover these concepts are at loggerheads with each other. And these, I guess, sort of the point that was making was that these words are tossed out in revolutions or extreme times, and then people sort of march under the banner without thinking too much about them. So if you're a French peasant, I know what these words mean. It means I can live in the Lord's castle. I'm going to cut the Lord's head off. maybe I'll become a new Lord. And there's certainly the fraternity, all those people that have stepped on my foot are now, I can embrace them. They may not want me to embrace them, but I'll have the privilege of doing that.
So you have the liberty to do that, and they don't have the liberty to say no.
Just so. And
then
so
are we equal?
Well, let's just keep going with that. Yeah. And so the idea is that a certain group of people, the majority of people actually in France, these words were to their benefit. But if you said, what about liberty, equality, fraternity for me on the other side, do you accept this? No, I don't. I don't want this. This is injuring me. I vote against it. And could even say the reason that I possess these privileges is I'm buddies with the king, and then the king got his power from God, and the church seconds this power, and then I'm worthy of my position because my kith and kin have always sacrificed their blood for the church to preserve Christ's, well, I guess, time on earth, so to speak, or preserve its Christian order. So the reason I possess this is I'm going to, it's true enough, I don't pay taxes, but I do have the obligation of being an officer in the military, you could say that. And I have to lead the men, and I could easily be killed in these often battles defending everyone. So I defend the peasants. I'm their protector. And since I'm sacrificing myself, there's a quid pro quo there. So that would be one way to sail the ship. I'm going to make one other comment about the way these words shake out. In my younger days in Cambridge, I was very amused by a slogan from the Russian Revolution that had made its way into Cambridge, which, as I can remember, it was bread, land, and peace.
You don't mean to say that the Harvard savants would possibly have been influenced by Marxist, Leninist ideology?
Well, in an amusing way.
I'm shocked that...
In an amusing way, Bucky. But so this was, trying to transmit the slogan of the Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, bread, land, and peace. What on earth does that mean? What on earth? But... So the slogan was extremely powerful in 1917.
Yes.
People, they were hungry. They wanted bread. Everyone was a peasant. Just to have enough land for a garden was huge, and they wanted to stop the war.
Yes.
But so the slogan, the French Revolution slogan, was used in the spirit of the time, but maybe didn't pass muster, particularly in present circumstances.
Yes. Well, I would say, and we're winding down to an end here, one of the best formulas I've ever heard from a law professor, Bill Witchard, late of the North Carolina Supreme Court, said law plus some variable is justice, is fairness for everybody. And we've never been able to find what that variable is. If you think of Rousseau, his first statements in the social contract, man is born free, but everywhere he's in chains. He's enchained by the system, this legal system. And so the idea is, well, if the system's chaining us, let's throw it off, but we have to replace it with another system, and that system will lead to more inequality.
And finally, is man really born free? You need milk, substance, warmth. So I'll throw that out.
Yes,
maybe you're born with dependence. And if you're dependent, maybe you can't be free.
We're back to all men are created equal. I think that's a good segue into fraternity.
And so we'll do that. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.